You knew that was coming. They're a little bit too far apart right here. Maybe they'll come to their senses and come to something in the middle. But I actually think the one thing very few people are talking about that has a higher probability of happening is a second executive order to reallocate the $380 billion that wasn't spent from the CARES Act. And, it's a gray area, but if you look at the legal precedent over the last 200 years, it's something certainly that the administration could do a second time to help those most in need with potentially stimulus checks, but most importantly is the enhanced unemployment continuation to get those people through until they can get their jobs back. And to this, as you spoke about earlier in the show, Kristen, this morning's ADP number was phenomenal. It absolutely beat expectations at 749,000. And I think that's going to portend extremely well for the Friday non-farm payroll, because the ADP has been coming in consistently lower during this period, the post-COVID period. So you could find yourself well above 850,000 non-farm payrolls on Friday. And I think what would really shock people, estimates are for the unemployment rate to come to 8.2%. You could see it in the high sevens, and no one would be looking for that just a few short months ago. So having regained more than half the jobs back since that were lost because of COVID, and some of these positive economic data coming in, I think we'll be okay. I think we'll muddle through. Maybe we'll get a deal, but more likely an executive order, and that should bridge us until after the election.
Tom, I think some of Mitch McConnell's comments kind of goes to something that your note says. I'm looking at it right now, where you talk about a, quote, information vacuum. How are investors going to trade through the next couple of months, particularly with an election just about 5 weeks away, considering that there are still so many question marks hovering, not just around stimulus, but also earnings, the election itself, a vaccine?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Kristen. There are really four things that the market needs, and we've seen this chop all of September. We're probably going to see a little bit more of that. Ultimately, it will resolve to the upside. But to your point, number one is the vaccine. We've got 4 in phase 3, so that's good news. We may get an announcement sooner than people expect. That would be good. But I will say, the announcement this morning from Regeneron was almost as important, because you're seeing this monoclonal antibodies as a treatment bridge, not only until we get the vaccine announcement, but till we get the vaccine distribution. So that's a critical piece. Then earnings estimates are really looking good. 69% less companies than average are issuing negative guidance for the quarter that we're going to hear from just in a couple of weeks. So that's a very, very positive thing. Companies are taking up their earnings expectations, and I think that's going to catch a lot of people by surprise. Certainly, you said the election, you have the risk of a delayed result this time, but fundamentally it'll get worked out. I think the market, as far as the election goes, the only thing that really matters from a stock market standpoint, leaving aside policy and ideology, is really the taxes. Because if you got a sweep, that's the only scenario. By the way, historically over the last 100 years, whether you get a Republican sweep or a Democratic sweep, the market underperforms. So you don't want to see a sweep. Gridlock is good for the stock market. For other things, maybe not, but for the stock market, it's good. And if you get a Democratic president, so long as one or the other, the Senate or the House are Republican, you won't get a change in the corporate tax rates. That's bullish for the market. If you get a Republican president, so long as you have a Democratic House or Senate, again, the tax rate for corporations will stay the same, and that's very bullish for the stock market. And then finally, to your point, the fourth thing to fill that information vacuum is the stimulus. And I think if we don't come to the middle, which would make sense, but just because it makes sense doesn't mean Congress will do it. I think likely an executive order, and that's something that maybe people aren't expecting that could be very, very positive in the short term to help those most in need.